Hello everyone, and welcome back to Jenny's Tales. Tonight's story is about something that should never happen. Losing someone you love is one of the hardest things in life. Time passes, memories slowly fade, and people learn to accept that the person is gone forever. But what would happen if one day a phone call came from someone who died years ago? Would anyone answer that call? Because the story tonight begins exactly like that. A phone ringing in the middle of the night, and the name of someone who should no longer exist appearing on the screen. This story is about a man named Daniel and his older brother Michael. Michael was the kind of brother everyone wished they had. Friendly, kind, always ready to help anyone who needed it. Growing up, the two brothers spent almost every day together. Summer afternoons were filled with baseball games in the backyard, long bike rides through quiet streets, late-night conversations about dreams and future plans. Michael was not just a brother. Michael was Daniel's best friend. But everything changed 5 years ago. One cold evening, two police officers arrived at the family house. Their expressions were serious. Too serious. They explained that Michael's car had lost control during a heavy storm. The road had been wet. The visibility had been poor. The car had gone off the road. The police called it a tragic accident. Just a terrible accident. But accidents can leave wounds that never truly heal. The family tried to move forward. Days slowly turned into months. Months eventually became years. Photographs of Michael remained in the living room. Stories about him were sometimes shared during family dinners. But life continued. Or at least, it appeared to. Until one night. A quiet night. A night when everything changed. It was around 3 in the morning. Daniel was awake in a small apartment, unable to sleep. The city outside was silent. Most people were asleep. Then suddenly, a phone started ringing. The sound echoed in the quiet room. At first, the call did not seem important. Probably a wrong number. Maybe a spam call. But when Daniel looked at the screen, something strange appeared. The caller ID showed a name that had not appeared on any phone for 5 years. Michael, the brother who died in the accident. For several seconds, Daniel simply stared at the screen. Confusion slowly turned into fear. Maybe someone else now owned that phone number. Maybe it was just a strange glitch. Phones sometimes make mistakes. But seeing that name again felt wrong. Very wrong. The phone kept ringing. Once. Twice. 3 times. Finally, Daniel answered the call. For a moment, there was only silence. Complete silence. Then a voice came through the phone. A quiet voice. A familiar voice. Daniel. The voice sounded exactly like Michael. The voice on the phone sounded exactly like Michael. Not similar. Not close. It sounded exactly the same as it had years ago. For a moment, Daniel could not speak. The room felt colder. The silence in the apartment suddenly felt heavy. Then the voice spoke again. Daniel, listen carefully. The voice sounded distant, almost like it was coming from very far away. Daniel's hands began to shake. 5 years had passed since Michael's death. The police report had been clear. The accident had been investigated. The funeral had taken place. Everyone had accepted what happened. So hearing that voice now was impossible. Daniel tried to speak. Who is this? For several seconds, there was only static on the line. A soft crackling sound filled the phone speaker. Then the voice returned. Daniel, don't trust them. The words were quiet, almost like a whisper. Daniel's heart began beating faster. Who is this? Daniel asked again. The voice did not answer the question. Instead, it said something even stranger. It wasn't an accident. And then, the call ended. The phone screen went dark. The apartment returned to silence. Daniel stared at the phone, waiting for it to ring again. But nothing happened. For the rest of the night, sleep never came. The next morning, sunlight slowly filled the apartment through the window. Everything looked normal again. Almost too normal. Daniel tried to convince himself that the call had a logical explanation. Someone must have been playing a prank. Maybe someone had found Michael's old phone number. Maybe a voice recording had been used. Technology could do strange things these days. But one detail refused to make sense. The voice had sounded real, not like a recording. It sounded alive. Daniel decided to check something. The call history on the phone. The last call showed a number. Michael's old phone number. The same number that had been disconnected years ago. Daniel stared at the screen for a long time. Then curiosity took control. The number was called back. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a robotic voice answered. The number you have dialed is not in service. Daniel slowly lowered the phone. Confusion turned into unease. The entire day passed without anything unusual happening. Work felt slow. Every hour Daniel checked the phone. No calls came. Maybe the strange event from the night before had been nothing. Maybe it had just been a mistake. But when night arrived again, sleep became impossible. Daniel stayed awake, watching the clock, waiting. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Nothing happened. Then suddenly, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the phone rang again. The same number appeared on the screen. Michael. The room felt colder than before. Daniel answered immediately. Who is this? Daniel demanded. Static filled the speaker again. Then the voice returned. Daniel, there isn't much time. The voice sounded weaker this time, almost strained. What do you mean? Daniel asked. The answer came slowly. They lied about what happened. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. Who lied? Daniel asked. But again, the voice did not answer directly. Instead, another warning came. Look in the old house, the blue box. Daniel's mind raced. The old house. The family house where Michael had lived. And the blue box. A memory suddenly returned. Years ago, Michael kept a small blue metal box in his room. A box he never allowed anyone to touch. Daniel opened his mouth to ask another question. But the voice spoke again. Be careful, someone is watching. Then the line suddenly filled with loud static. And the call ended again. The next morning Daniel drove to the family house. The house looked exactly the same as always. Quiet. Peaceful. Almost frozen in time. Michael's room had never been changed. The family had left everything the way it was. Daniel slowly opened the bedroom door. Dust floated through the sunlight coming from the window. Old memories filled the room. The desk. The posters on the wall. The shelf of books. Everything looked exactly as it had years ago. Then Daniel began searching. Drawers were opened. Closets were checked. Finally, under the bed, something appeared. A small blue metal box. Exactly where Michael used to keep it. Daniel lifted the box carefully. The metal felt cold. The lid slowly opened. Inside were several objects. Old photographs. A small notebook. And an envelope. The envelope had something written on the front. 3 simple words. If something happens. Daniel stared at the envelope in silence. Because suddenly, the phone inside Daniel's pocket began to ring again. And the caller ID still showed the same name. Michael. The phone continued ringing inside Daniel's pocket. For several seconds, Daniel simply stared at the blue metal box lying open on the bed. Inside the box were the photographs, the small notebook, and the envelope with the words written clearly across the front. If something happens. The ringing did not stop. Slowly, Daniel reached into the pocket and pulled out the phone. The screen was glowing in the dim bedroom light. The same name appeared once again. Michael. A deep breath filled the quiet room. Then the call was answered. For a moment, nothing. Only silence. Then the familiar voice returned. But this time the voice sounded weaker than before. Almost tired. Daniel, did the box get opened? Daniel looked down at the objects on the bed. Yes, Daniel answered carefully. For a few seconds the line remained quiet. Then the voice spoke again. Good. Daniel's heart was racing now. Michael, what is happening? Daniel asked. But the voice did not answer the question directly. Instead the voice said something strange. The truth is in the notebook. Daniel slowly picked up the small notebook from the bed. The cover looked worn. Edges slightly bent. The pages inside were filled with handwritten notes. The voice continued speaking. Start reading, from the beginning. Daniel opened the first page. Inside were several dates written in Michael's handwriting. Beneath the dates were short sentences. Simple notes. At first, they seemed harmless. Just daily thoughts. But as the pages turned, the writing became different. More serious. More urgent. One entry read, "Something strange is happening at work." Another entry followed a few days later. "Someone is hiding something." Daniel's eyes moved quickly across the pages. The notes continued. "They think nobody is paying attention." Then another entry appeared. "If anything happens, the evidence is in the envelope." Daniel stopped reading. Slowly, the envelope was lifted from the bed. The words on the front suddenly felt much heavier than before. "If something happens." The voice on the phone spoke again. "Open it." Carefully, Daniel tore the envelope open. Inside were several folded papers. The first paper looked like a report. A printed document. The title at the top read, "Vehicle Inspection Report." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. This was connected to the car accident. The accident that had taken Michael's life. The document was examined closely. Lines of technical information filled the page. Brake system. Engine condition. Safety components. Then one sentence stood out clearly. "Brake line damage detected before the crash." Daniel felt the room grow colder. Brake line damage. That meant something terrible. It meant the brakes might have failed before the accident even happened. The voice on the phone spoke again. Quietly. "They said it was a storm, remember?" Daniel slowly nodded, even though the person on the phone could not see. "Yes, they lied." The words felt heavy in the air. Daniel picked up the next paper from the envelope. This one looked like a photograph. A picture of a parking lot. In the image, Michael's car could clearly be seen. But there was something else in the picture. Another person standing near the driver's side door. The face was not clear, but the figure looked like someone was working on the car. Daniel's hands began shaking. "What does this mean?" Daniel asked. For a moment the voice did not respond. Then the answer came slowly. Someone didn't want the truth to come out. The line filled briefly with static. Then the voice continued. "The accident wasn't an accident." Daniel's mind raced with questions. "Who did this?" Daniel asked. But before the voice could answer, something strange happened. The call suddenly went silent. Not disconnected, just silent. Daniel checked the phone screen. The call was still active. Then suddenly, another sound came through the speaker. Footsteps. Very faint footsteps. Then a whisper. But this whisper was different. This voice was not Michael's. A second voice spoke quietly. "Too late." The call ended instantly. The phone screen went dark. Daniel stood frozen in the bedroom. Because suddenly something else became clear. The window beside Michael's bed was slightly open. And outside, someone had just been standing there, watching. The phone call had ended. Silence filled the room again. Daniel stood near the window for a long time, staring into the darkness outside the house. The yard was empty. The wind moved slowly through the trees. But something felt wrong. Someone had been there. Someone had been watching. Daniel closed the window and stepped away from it. The blue metal box was still lying open on the bed. Inside were the photographs, the notebook, and the documents from the envelope. The words written in the notebook echoed in Daniel's mind. Someone is hiding something. Slowly, the photographs from the box were picked up again. Each one showed different places. Parking lots, buildings, street corners. At first the images seemed random. But after looking more carefully, a pattern began to appear. Many of the photos showed the same building. A large gray building near the edge of town. Daniel recognized the place immediately. It was the company where Michael had worked. Michael had worked there for several years before the accident. It was a small engineering company that repaired industrial machines. Michael had always spoken proudly about the job. But something inside the notebook suggested that something had gone wrong. Very wrong. The next morning, Daniel drove across town. The building looked the same as always. Large metal doors. Tall windows. A quiet parking lot. Nothing about the place looked suspicious. Workers moved in and out of the building normally. Everything appeared ordinary. But the notebook told a different story. Daniel walked toward the front entrance. Inside, the building smelled like oil and metal. Machines hummed in the distance. A receptionist sat behind the front desk. She looked up with a polite smile. "Can someone help you?" Daniel hesitated for a moment. Then Michael's name was mentioned. The smile slowly disappeared from the receptionist's face. A strange expression replaced it. Almost nervous. "Yes. Michael worked here," she said carefully. "But that was a long time ago." Daniel nodded. "I know." The receptionist glanced down the hallway, almost as if making sure nobody else was listening. Then she leaned forward slightly. "People here still talk about what happened," she whispered. Daniel's attention sharpened. "What did they say?" The receptionist hesitated. Then she spoke quietly. "They say Michael discovered something." Daniel felt a chill. "Discovered what?" But the receptionist shook her head. "Better ask Mr. Harris." Daniel recognized the name immediately. Mr. Harris had been Michael's manager. His office was located on the second floor. The office door slowly opened. Inside sat a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. Mr. Harris. He looked surprised to see Daniel. For a moment the room remained silent. Then Mr. Harris spoke. "Daniel, it has been a long time." Daniel sat down across from him. "Yes." A heavy silence filled the office. Finally Daniel spoke. "Something was found in Michael's notebook." Mr. Harris's expression immediately changed. The calm look on his face disappeared. "What kind of notes?" he asked carefully. Daniel placed the notebook on the desk. Mr. Harris slowly opened it. His eyes moved across the pages. The more he read, the more nervous he looked. Finally, he closed the notebook. Then he sighed deeply. Michael should have stayed away from that. Daniel leaned forward. "Away from what?" Mr. Harris stood up and walked to the office window. He stared outside for several seconds before speaking again. "About a week before the accident, Michael came to this office." Daniel listened carefully. "He said something strange was happening with the company's machines." Daniel frowned. "What kind of machines?" Mr. Harris turned around. "The machines that repair industrial brakes." The words hung in the air. Industrial brakes. Daniel's mind began connecting the pieces. "Michael believed someone was changing the parts," Mr. Harris continued. "Cheap parts were being used instead of the safe ones." Daniel's eyes widened. "Dangerous parts." Mr. Harris nodded slowly. "If those machines failed, people could die." The room became quiet. Then Daniel asked the most important question. "Did Michael report it?" Mr. Harris nodded. "Yes." And 3 days later, the accident happened. Daniel left the building with a heavy feeling. The sky had grown darker outside. Storm clouds slowly moved across the town. Michael had discovered something dangerous. Something illegal. Something that could destroy the company. And only 3 days later, the accident happened. But the most disturbing detail was still the brake report. The brake line damage. Someone had tampered with the car. That meant one thing. Michael had been silenced. That night Daniel returned to the apartment. Rain began falling outside. Thunder echoed in the distance. The blue metal box was placed on the kitchen table. The notebook was opened again. More pages were examined. Then something new was noticed. A small piece of paper had been hidden between 2 pages. Daniel carefully pulled it out. On the paper was an address. Just an address. No explanation. No name. Just a location. Before Daniel could think about it further, a sudden sound came from outside the apartment. A car door. Then footsteps. Daniel walked slowly toward the window. Outside, a black car sat parked across the street. The engine was still running, but no one was inside. Then something moved near the apartment door. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Careful. Someone was standing outside. Then came a quiet knock. 3 slow knocks. Daniel did not move. The knocking came again. 3 more times. Then a voice spoke through the door. A calm voice. A dangerous voice. "Daniel, open the door." The voice sounded familiar. Very familiar. Daniel's heart stopped. Because the voice belonged to someone unexpected. Someone connected to Michael's past. Someone who had been silent for 5 years. Mr. Harris. And at that exact moment, Daniel's phone began ringing again. The screen lit up in the dark room. And once again, the caller ID showed the same impossible name. Michael. The phone was still ringing on the table. Michael's name glowed on the screen again. Outside the apartment door, Mr. Harris was still standing in the hallway. The knocking came again. Slow. Heavy. Daniel, open the door. The voice sounded calm, but something about it felt dangerous. Daniel looked at the phone. Then the call was answered. For a moment there was only static. Then Michael's voice returned. Quiet. Urgent. Do not open the door. Daniel's heart began beating faster. Outside the door, Mr. Harris spoke again. You already know the truth, don't you? Daniel stayed silent. Inside the phone, Michael's voice spoke again. There is one more thing inside the blue box. Daniel quickly walked back to the table. The blue metal box was opened again. The photographs and papers were moved aside. Then something small appeared underneath them. A folded note. Daniel opened it. Inside were only a few words written in Michael's handwriting. The recorder is in the car. Daniel froze. What recorder? Daniel whispered. Michael's voice answered quietly. 5 years ago, a recorder was hidden inside the car. Everything suddenly made sense. Michael had been collecting proof. Proof about the dangerous brake parts. Proof about the company. Proof about the person responsible. Outside the apartment door, Mr. Harris knocked again. This time harder. Daniel, open the door right now. Daniel stepped away from the door. Michael's voice continued. The car was taken to the police storage yard after the accident. Daniel understood immediately. If the recorder was still inside the car, then the truth still existed. And if the truth existed, everything could finally be revealed. At that moment, sirens echoed outside the building. Police cars rushed down the street. Mr. Harris suddenly stopped knocking. Footsteps quickly moved down the hallway. By the time Daniel opened the door, Mr. Harris had disappeared. The next morning, Daniel went to the police storage yard. After several minutes of searching, Michael's old car was finally found. The car looked badly damaged. Time had not been kind to it. Daniel searched inside the vehicle carefully. Under the driver's seat, a small recording device was finally discovered. Hands shaking, Daniel pressed the play button. Static filled the air for a moment. Then voices appeared. Michael's voice came first. This recording is proof. Then another voice answered. Mr. Harris, you should have stayed quiet. Michael refused. People could die because of those parts. The conversation continued. Mr. Harris sounded angry. The truth was clear. The company had been secretly using dangerous brake parts. Michael had discovered everything. And Mr. Harris had been responsible. Then the final sentence appeared in the recording. Cold. Threatening. Then the accident will happen tonight. The recording stopped. Daniel slowly lowered the device. The truth had finally been revealed. That same evening, the recording was given to the police. Mr. Harris was arrested later that night. The investigation reopened. Michael's death was no longer considered an accident. Justice had finally arrived. But one question still remained. The phone calls. Late that night, the phone rang again. Michael's name appeared on the screen one last time. Daniel answered slowly. The voice sounded calm. Peaceful. Thank you. For a moment the room was completely silent. Then the voice spoke again. The truth needed to be told. The call ended. The screen went dark. And after that night, the phone never rang again. But one thing remains certain. Sometimes, the truth refuses to stay buried. And sometimes, even after death, a voice will find a way to be heard.